Welcome to Seminar Sunday, District 21's weekly episodic webinar series. It's great to have you with us today as we explore Easy Speak. This session will be covering some of the basics of Easy Speak. We'll have time for question and answer as well. And please do utilize things like the chat. We have an attendee chat that you're able to utilize if you're joining us on the computer. You can put in comments, questions throughout the session, and we will be more than happy to explore those throughout the session. I certainly do not mind getting interrupted by questions. We also have a question submission at the top. If you prefer to submit your question that way, that will go directly to the meeting host, myself. And because this will be largely interactive, I do encourage you, if you are within reach of logging in via computer, please try to do that, just because it is a little bit more convenient to be able to see what we're going through. Nevertheless, I will try to explain what we're looking at best I can, but for the full experience, please do join on the computer if you can. So this, as I mentioned at the start, is a weekly episode. And with that being said, of course, we are taking a short break over the holiday season. So next week will be our final Seminar Sunday of the year, not only the month, but the year. And that will be on Toastmasters core values, but we'll be coming back January, right at the beginning, ready to go in preparation for things like Toastmasters month and, of course, speech contests as well, which will be a thing in the new year. So let's talk about what we're going to cover in this session. We are doing an advanced session at 7 p.m. Pacific time as well, but this one is more or less just basics, covering off things like, what is Easy Speak? Most of you are likely familiar with what at least it is prior to joining this call, but it will definitely cover off just some of the things that Easy Speak is capable of. We're also going to talk about how to navigate through the site, sign up for roles, and how you can manage when you're the Toastmaster for the meeting. Finally, we'll just discuss any other abilities that we don't get a chance to review this evening. So what is Easy Speak? Well, Easy Speak is a tool that you can utilize for your club that I would suggest its primary function is scheduling your weekly meetings. It has lots of other little features that you can take advantage of as your club decides it's appropriate, but primarily it is a club scheduling tool. And from my personal experience, I would suggest it is the best tool I have seen for scheduling. All in all, it may not necessarily be the best tool for your club's needs if you're looking for something beyond club scheduling, as I think that's its real strength. Beyond that, there's other options available that are slightly better. For example, Free Toast Host, which we talked about a number of Seminar Sundays ago. That's really good for a website and gives you decent scheduling abilities as well. Easy Speak, not so good for its other features, really good for the scheduling. So it's really a matter of, do you want a number of different platforms that your club is using? Do you want to pick one that's the best of both worlds? Do you want to focus on one thing versus another? And hopefully through this webinar, you'll be able to explore what works best for you and take that back to your club and discuss, if you're not already using Easy Speak, that is, of course. Any questions thus far about the site? We're going to kind of jump in just a moment here to actually going through some of the pages, and I think that's where it really comes to life more than me explaining it. Happy to take questions. Of course, the thing with these questions is they take time to type. So I will continue on, and like I said, always happy to be, I can pause wherever I am, jump into a question, and once we get into the demo as well, we'll be able to actually walk through where certain things are within the site. Just for your reference as well, before we skip right into the demo here, and thank you, I do see we've got a question that's come in. Before we get into this demo, I did want to mention as well, this Easy Speak is something that is developed by a Toastmaster, and same with Free Toast Host. None of it is from Toastmasters International directly, which means that volunteers are creating it, and they do have a section where folks can make a donation if they choose to, which helps run the cost of the site. But I just thought I'd highlight that. This particular site is a gentleman by the name of Malcolm, and he is over in the UK. I believe he's a member in District 91 over there. So I did want to highlight that as well, just because it's important to note those things, that this whole organization is based on volunteering. You joining this webinar are likely a club officer for your club, so you're volunteering and serving your club. I'm volunteering and serving my district, and that's really what makes Toastmasters go around. So kudos to Malcolm for developing this great platform. Without further ado, let's jump into a demo. So I'm going to share my screen, and if you are joining by computer here, you'll be able to see the screen in just a moment. So I'm going to skip away from, should just be loading now, and just waiting for it to just completely display. There we go. Okay. This is the landing page once you log in. So the web address you can see in the top bar here, easy-speak.org. That is the universal address to get to the website. You will also be able to have a kind of a personalized URL for your club's use, and that will be once you initiate the site. So that's something we may talk a little bit more about in the advanced section, which is 7 o'clock on, and so that will require you to come back onto the webinar after this one. And super easy to set up in a nutshell, but once it's set up and you log in, this is the kind of page that you'll discover. Now you'll notice this one here says Welcome to Victoria Diversity, and that's because this page is customizable. So whoever your VP Public Relations is, or perhaps another member of the club, depending on who has different technical abilities and a willingness to keep this information current, may decide to put some content on the homepage, because this could potentially be seen by guests. It's not, as I said, quite as user-friendly as the Free Toast Host, but you can end up in a situation where this is on your, this could be your homepage, and other pages can be created as well. So once again, we'll get into this a little bit more in the advanced session, and I do see the question we had was about the advanced session and registration for the advanced session. I believe that is possible. You would just need to navigate over to d21toastmasters.org, and under the events there's a link to register. Alternately, let me see here. I think Sean Gold sent out an email on Friday that also has the registration link to register for the advanced session. So please see that. If anybody can even throw the address in the chat, that would be appreciated. That way, anybody that does want to also take the advanced can simply follow the address in the chat. So I'm not going to get into this too much because, as I said, I mean, it's something that can be customized, but as a basic user, usually you're not going to be the person that will be editing this page. And if you do, I'd really recommend the advanced session where we can cover it in just a little bit more detail. At the end of the day, I mean, we're only going to have an hour for each one of these sessions, so we'll definitely have to skip over some pieces, but I do want to make sure the important pieces are covered off in both of these sessions. So at the top here, you've kind of got this bar. You can see that I'm scrolling through it. And the bar, thank you, Sean, is all these different features that you can take advantage of. The most common one you'll use is just a member of a club signing up for roles and not doing any type of administration would probably be the meetings here, because you can actually go in and there's your next meeting. Boom, you click on that and away you go. You can also see monthly agendas if you want to. And what I mean by that is you'll see the your club's meetings, but you can also see other clubs' meetings. All right, let's go to January. So here's the January 2019 calendar, and I just want to quickly highlight the fact that you'll see other clubs that are using Easy Speak in your, I think it's area and division. It might be geographic based, because I see clubs from 2 different divisions here. And it's just kind of nice because you know which neighboring clubs are also utilizing this website. And that's really convenient for you to know in case you wanted to discuss with them anything about using the site. And you can see some limited things about the other club as well. So if I clicked on one of these, which I'm not going to right now, I'd be able to see their meeting agendas, but instead of showing me the names of the people that are taking on roles, what it will usually do is just show the username. So that doesn't necessarily give you an idea who it is unless their username is very similar to their name. The site does restrict you from having your surname in your username for privacy reasons. So you wouldn't necessarily see, Michael Bown, for example. You would see, it could be Michael B123, for example. That's just restriction within the site, as I said, for privacy. So we're probably more interested here, I would suggest, in our meetings. So that's just an FYI if you ever want to go in and see what else is going on. Let's go forward to the next week's meeting. All right, there we go. So December 24th, we're having a Toastmasters meeting, and as a member of this club, I'm able to see a number of things. Number one is I could print the agenda if I wanted to, or load up the agenda. If a word of the day has been selected or a theme, we'll see that here. It's also nice if your venue changes. It does include the venue. Most clubs I find don't move around very much, but a good thing that could happen here, of course, is because this is located at a college, you could end up in a position where you're moving rooms, and that would be a good spot for that to be indicated. Below kind of the header area, there's 2 sections. The left-hand side is more just strictly for attendance and recording who's going to be at the meetings. The right-hand side is your agenda in a nutshell. I mean, it doesn't have the timing and everything on it, but it shows who's assigned roles and keeps track of whether people have confirmed their attendance or not. So in this case here, we'll see Michael Bown is the Toastmaster. He has not confirmed his attendance though, because we can see that question mark. Jojo Bown though is the general evaluator, and she has already went in and confirmed her attendance here. So you can see that with the check mark next to her name. And then finally, Seminar Sunday, which is the account that we're using, has been set up by the Vice President of Education as the speech evaluator, and now we just need to confirm or decline the role. If you decline, it comes up with a box asking to briefly explain why you're declining. And what it does is it actually shows up on the other side of the screen here. It's the confirm attendance. If we decline, below that, it will say unavailable for the meeting, for example, or whatever text we put into that box. So just as a heads up, that does publicly display. I believe everyone can see that when you decline the role. But it is super easy to do, and sometimes, it doesn't mean that you're not necessarily attending the meeting. It could be that you've already got a role in the meeting or something. So very straightforward. In this case, we're going to accept We're going to be the first speech evaluator at this meeting. And then once it reloads, it's going to show that confirmation. And what you may not have noticed as well is it's also confirming our attendance at that meeting. So that is automatic. If you confirm your attendance on the other side and don't confirm the role, it doesn't automatically go that direction. So, for example, if you're assigned by Vice President Education as the Toastmaster and you confirm your attendance, your Toastmaster role is still unconfirmed. So definitely easier to start on the right and confirm a role if you've got a role, and then it will auto confirm your attendance. And it's nice to, in clubs that are really keen and they've got that motivation to really get their agendas working well, which some clubs do, they will have people go in weeks or months in advance and actually confirm their attendance. Like, we have one member who's spent a number of months in Europe. So she actually went through every weekly meeting until I think it's this month sometime and confirmed that she wasn't going to be attending. So it's really nice if you kind of got an idea when you're going to miss meetings. That way you can very early on go in, say, I'm not coming to this meeting. Your Vice President Education will not assign you a role. And further to that, the Vice President Education has the ability to auto-assign meeting roles. There is a minimum requirement, so I believe you need at least, approximately 10 people that are coming to the meeting in order for it to auto-assign. But what it does is it picks from the person who's done it, as far back as possible, and kind of just assigns based on that. So it's really a cool system in that sense, that you're not going to end up being general evaluator 3 weeks in a row, because the general evaluator role is something that will automatically just assign to the person that had it as far back as possible. And it just skips over you, like I said, if you've said you're not attending. So something to keep in mind if you do have holidays or something planned and know in advance, then you can go ahead and do that. The next meeting, there's nothing assigned, and you may, in some cases, have the option, depending on how the club has set up the account to work, you may actually be able to say, all right, I'm Toastmaster, there's no Toastmaster, I want to be Toastmaster, and you can click on a button and it puts you into that position. In this particular setup, that isn't an option, but just keep that in mind as well, that is another thing that you may see as a member, the ability to just volunteer yourself for roles. And it's something that the administration of this site is very, very customizable. So the club could set it up in a way that you can volunteer for a role, for example, a week in advance, but up to 4 hours in advance. So that way there's a window from when the VP Education is no longer going to do a signing, for example, to the point when the agenda is going to be printed, or something along those lines. All the roles are assigned by the VP Education. The one exception to just the regular weekly roles is speeches. And of course, they're a little different. You're not likely, although I know some clubs do, you're not as likely, I should say, to assign these on a rotation. Most clubs, they talk to their members, see how often their member wants to give a speech, and you'll have the members that want to do a speech a month. You'll have the member that wants to do a speech every 6 weeks, and perhaps you'll have a member that's really just trying to, they're trying to blast through an award for whatever reason it happens to be, and therefore they want to speak every, 2 weeks, for example. So just something to keep in mind is that will not auto-assign if you are VP Education. And also, it's it's going to be something you have to request through the site. Your VP Education can request it for you as well. So if your club is not necessarily managing it in that way, that's okay. There's no issue whatsoever with that. But this button here, Request a Speech, will bring up 3 kind of sections to fill out. Let's say speech title is going to be Why I Lead Seminar Sunday. Put your introduction in for the Toastmasters. So if you've got something that you want read off, which every club really should have this, but it's totally up to you whether you include that there or just you send it separately. Some clubs do it one way, other clubs do it the other way, and there's no wrong or right. Here you pick which workbook you're working from. So if you're still working on the traditional program, you'll be able to select one of those. Here is another kicker. This is something that can be very frustrating for a club. I've seen people get a little lost here. If you are working through the traditional program and doing a high performance leadership or one of the successful club series, any of those, they're found down here, as you can see. A lot of times people get a little confused looking for some of these because they are kind of hidden and a little bit different. So just something to keep in mind is that's how you would request your high performance leadership speech. Same concept. All right, we are going to let's do innovative planning. So we select that workbook. So once you, usually when you select your workbook, what will happen is it populates the projects below and you select. So you, for example, this is a new workbook, you're going to pick likely level 1 icebreaker in the innovative planning path. That's it. Once those are filled out, you hit save. Because we requested a speech on this page, the specific date, it's going to pick that for you as a preferred date. There's other areas of the site where you can also request a speech, and that will require you to go through then and pick. Let's see here. I think it's under, here we are. So under one of these anyways, that you can actually request a speech. And oh, here we are on the side. So when you request here, it's not going to usually default a date. It's actually going to get you to pick a date before it allows you to go any further. So anyways, I'm not going to wait for it to load. It's the exact same screens. It's just the last tab there. You need to pick a preferred date to do your speech. That's the only difference between requesting somewhere else on the site and requesting on the individual agenda. Next meeting, we are actually the Toastmaster, I believe. All right, so here we are as Toastmaster. You'll notice immediately once I load up this page that it looks quite different. By default, the site is set up in a way where the Toastmaster has full control over aspects of the agenda. Here you'll see that it's a very similar look and feel, of course, no matter how you go in and whether it's a member attending the meeting or whether you're going to be the Toastmaster. But options start to open up. So you'll see, for example, because I'm the Toastmaster now, all of a sudden I can start assigning people roles, and you see the auto button as well to auto assign. So I can pick from the drop-down list, and you can see here, this is how long it's been since a certain person has taken on the role. So these members without a date means that they have never taken on this role, or at least in this system they haven't. So if you just adopt using Easy Speak, then of course for the first little while you'll probably want to adjust things manually until the system starts to know how long it's been since somebody last took a role. So in this case, I would assign this person to be our general evaluator because it's been 63 days, or maybe I'll put one of the folks that haven't done it, just depending on, you know, whether they're a new member or what the reasoning is for not having taken on the role. If it's somebody's second week as a Toastmaster, you're probably not going to put them into the general evaluator role. And that's another thing that the VP Education can adjust in the auto scheduling, is how long needs to pass before a new member takes on some of the more senior roles like Toastmaster, general evaluator, etc. As Toastmaster, I can also confirm or deny people's attendance. So if somebody calls me and says, you know what, I can't make it to this meeting, I can click on no on their behalf and kind of keep track myself of who's coming, who's not. You can put the theme in. And one of the things with the theme is you just actually go in and hit save. That's it. Set it and forget it. You can see your agenda. One of the other really cool things you can do is you can email, and I'll show you that in just a moment, as well as edit the agenda. So let's say, for example, this meeting, you are not doing table topics because you've got some sort of educational session happening instead or something like that. You can actually go in, remove the table topics master role, and add in the educational presenter role. The speeches here, you can see who, these are the people that have requested a speech. So if somebody has actually requested a speech, you can assign them through the drop down, but it's not quite the same as I mentioned just before when we were talking about the request a speech. It's not just a simple drop down where you can pick anybody. It's people that have already requested, or to the left here is where you request a speech on their behalf. So when you go in through this option, you actually pick which member of your club is going to do the speech. And then you get, once you hit go here, you get the same screen that you would get yourself, except you're requesting a speech for an individual member instead of yourself this time. So if somebody called you up and said, hey, I want to do a speech on home heating, for example, you could put that in, you know, home heating, and carry on from there. So that's how to do that. And then let me just quickly go in here as well to the agenda editing. This is a little bit of a more intimidating screen, I would suggest, because there's just quite a lot going on. The simple gist of it is over here, you're dealing with the order of things on the agenda. So if you want something to be, you know, first, for example, you could go ahead and put a number 1 here. It's lower than all these numbers. If you want to remove that something, you put an X in, and then you save the new order, and it takes care of it for you. You can move up and down with these buttons as well. You can drag and drop, I believe. There's lots of options for moving things around. If you decide that, you know what, the Toastmaster is going to open the program and take 20 minutes, you can just edit here. All of these are able to be edited. You can put a different name in for the event if you want to, different roles. You have all the abilities to change pretty much anything about this agenda. And this is where you could go, all right, well, it's going to be 20 minutes now. The green light's going to come on at 10, the amber at 15, and the red's going to come on at 20. Simple as that. Do your update, and away you go. Now the Toastmaster is on for 20 minutes at the start. The time of the meeting has increased as a result by another 15 minutes because, of course, we've added 15 minutes to the time there. So it takes care of all of those things for you. And if we pull up the agenda, here we are. So we'll notice that as well now, that it has increased the time to 20 minutes on the agenda. I also personally love the way it recognizes your performance in the Distinguished Club program right at the top underneath the club's name. And the person who's administering it can edit a bunch of things, how the agenda looks, and add another logo in and everything. It's quite neat. So the last thing I want to show you in this section here is the email. This is one of the reasons that I really love this site more than any others for scheduling weekly meetings. It has this neat ability to, you write your message in here, and this is kind of your first email, and you choose who this goes to. I don't know what it's trying to do there. There we go. You can have this go to guests, visitors, anybody you want it to go to, and you type in anything as well here. You can have different fonts just by hitting this this hide or show toolbars button. You can put in emojis, etc., and then just hit send. And that's going to go to everyone that it says. It's going to tell you how many people it's going to. It's going to also give you a confirmation after you send that it's been sent. Excuse me. So it's really high powered, but what I like even more than just this initial email that you send out is there's an emails 2 through 5. This is where you put the body in, same concept as the first one, but it actually has these specific emails. So here's the email you would send to people that aren't assigned roles, but perhaps they're just going to attend the meeting. Here's the email for people that have been assigned a role. And the wording is slightly different based on each of those emails. It's also neat that you can actually send a reminder to users who have confirmed their roles. You can resend emails automatically. So if somebody's not responding, you can say every 6 hours, I want them to keep getting this email. Or however many hours you set it to be. If you set it 6 hours a week ahead of time, some people may no longer be your friend, but certainly it's a cool tool to be able to have. And then you've got the one for the vacant roles and the agenda. And finally, there's a mentors one. The system manages the mentor-mentee relationships as well, so it can always give all the mentors a heads up to say, hey, you know, your mentee is taking on the Table Topics Master role for the first time. Just a heads up, you may want to touch base with them. So that's what I really like about the agenda. I do want to pause a moment before we move on to any other sections and recognize that, Anna, you've asked a question regarding how to start using EasySpeak. I'll try to cover this right at the end of this webinar. And it's very simple. You just go to the easy-speak.org, and on that home page, there is a section to request EasySpeak. The administrator for this site does need to set it up for you. So I believe you put in your club number and a few other small details, and then a day or two or so, and the site is set up with you as the administrator. And then you can go in and start kind of playing around. And how I did it with one club is we kind of just we spent, I think it was a couple months testing it. This was when I first started using it because I wanted to make sure it was right for our club and everything. So we spent a couple of months, I believe, developing it, building it to be the way we wanted it to be as a club. And then we started actually running the agendas concurrently in the program versus how we did it, which was more or less an Excel spreadsheet before that. And that way it got a little bit of history built up and we got to see how it worked. And then I think we had some sort of launch celebration at the club where we presented it formally, and they were able to get a demo at that time and start using it the next week or something like that. So definitely you want to be careful when you deploy something like this because it's new technology and that can be intimidating for some people. Definitely want to make sure you get in there and play around a little bit before just opening up to the whole club. So besides the meetings, which is, as I said, the primary reason I believe this site was created was to help you schedule meetings, and it does a good job at that. There's a lot of power behind it, you know, a lot of customization that you can do to your heart's desire. And I personally believe this offers you the most customization as well. FreeToast Host offers some when it comes to scheduling, but not as much as EasySpeak. And there's other options out there, but I don't think they offer much customization at all. I'm happy to be proven wrong. If anybody knows of any really good sites where you can tailor things to exactly how your club likes it, that's what Toastmasters is all about, sharing, right? Just flipping through the other sections here. So my participation is where you can go in, you can sign up for meeting roles, and this is one of the cool things about the system as well, is it actually, because you're signing up for speeches, it actually goes in and shows you your progress. From this screen, I can actually go in and of course, this is relatively empty because this is just a demo account, but oh, there we go. It did save a requested speech, Why I Lead Seminar Sunday. So we can see the requested speeches at the top. We can request new ones. And then down below, you can see, all right, this is all the things you need to do in innovative planning to finish all the way up to level 5. And through it, you can request speeches beside each project, which of course then will default to that project. And you could have everything ready to go if you wanted to. If you are super organized, you're like, you know what, I'm going to finish one whole path in a year's time. You could schedule it through here whenever you have a moment to go in and do it. So that's nice from a user experience perspective, that you're able to really have that endpoint visualized, how you're going to get all the way to level 5 and complete level 5. It is, of course, a system that's been around for a little bit of time, and therefore you'll also see things like, you know, the projects 1 through 10, which was much based on, you know, the competent communicator, and the advanced speaker manuals had the 1 to 5, all of that. So they're just trying to transition it now. So there's a few things like that you'll notice through the site where it's not quite fully pathways, and it probably won't be until the traditional program's completely phased out anyways. Just something to note though. Under My Communication, there is a discussion forum. So if your club was really a sociable club and you wanted to chat with one another, you know, on the computer instead of you know, email or phone call or whatever, you can start utilizing the forum. That's one of the features that I personally find to be a bit random. It's you know, I don't belong to any clubs that really communicate outside of either email or phone calls. But if that, it could be a resource depository as well. That's the only other thing that I'd really encourage use of there is, you know what, if you've got some resources that you think could be handy, you could dump them off in the discussion forum, and that could just be kind of people know to go there for, scripts for different roles or something along those lines. There is private messaging as well, so you'd see that here if you had new messages. The club is, this is quite interesting here. This is, you can go in and you can actually see who your club officers are. You can see all the members of your club. The charts on how we're doing with different things. I don't know that I'll go through all of them here. We might pick a couple to go into. Let's see what could be interesting. Let's see what the speech list looks like. So here's a speech list of everybody's upcoming speeches. You can see it's a bit messy, but here's the upcoming or requested speeches, and it'll give you the dates and everything, of course, once they're scheduled. And then there's the recent speeches, who's recently done a speech, and all the information about those speeches that they've done. And let's go into roles by. So here's a breakdown. When you go into roles by member, you can see each week what the member is scheduled to take on. So some meetings they have roles, some meetings they don't. And it's really a nice breakdown. So just thought I'd highlight that. I'm not sure that there's a lot else you'd want to get into from a basics perspective, but I'd love to take some more questions. If anybody has anything that they'd like to see how to do, or maybe your club's already using it and there's something that you're not quite sure the abilities, or okay, well, I'll continue along, and if you're typing in a question, feel free to submit it. No problem whatsoever. I'm happy to answer it. I realized I didn't really go through this on the left-hand side much. A lot of it you can find in the top here as well. Like the My Participation, of course, is pretty much very similar to the one at the top. But what I do like over here is, oh, sorry, it's skipping around really fast. My communication. So there's that forum that we talked about. There's the ability to have a photo album, all of that. But you can also send a message to different people. So if you want to send a message to the treasurer and say, hey, I've got your money, you can actually do that right here. Put in your subject, your message body, and away it goes. Off it goes to that individual. So that's something that I really appreciate about the site, is that it's got that fast access, and especially for a new member. I mean, if you're not necessarily sure who is doing what, it's nice to be able to have that there. And people may stumble upon it when they're 2 weeks into your club and they want to send a message to the president and ask a question. Super easy for them to do. And the last thing that's kind of fun is there's the connection to the organization. So from the club, you see the area, division, and the district. And theoretically, areas, divisions, and districts can also have pages on EasySpeak. District 21 does not have much of a presence on EasySpeak. We do have an administrator, though, for the district, and she can help with some things, like setting up your club, those types of services. She's a volunteer, of course, like everybody else is, and her name is April Kennedy. She's a distinguished Toastmaster in the Langley area. So if you need anything, contact me first, and I can always refer you to her if I'm not sure the answer. And she's just such a great resource for this site, and has abilities. Like if your site, if you don't use the site, for example, after setting it up for a while, it kind of goes into a suspend mode. She can unsuspend, things like that. Really helpful. And I do see we had another question coming in. my practice, I couldn't go farther ahead too far because it has to be set up first by VP Education. Okay, so yes, the VP Education does have to set up the meetings, or any administrator for that matter. So that's something worthy of highlighting as well. Is under your club officers. Okay, you can't see it, but there is a role that's set up as the tech support, basically. I forget the exact terminology the site uses, but it's basically your tech support person for the site, and that by default is the person who sets up the site. They can do anything in the site at all. So there's that person. And VP Education, absolutely. A number of other roles can probably set it up. It should be the VP Education, but if meetings aren't set up for, let's say, February, and you want to go in and you want to request a speech in the middle of February, you just let the VP Education know. It takes 2 seconds to set up a new meeting. It is really super quick. I can't believe how quick it is to set up a meeting, actually. So that is the abilities anyways within this site, and it is something that I absolutely love. I'm going to switch back to our show here. All right, there we go. So I do have just a few more minutes for questions. I'm happy to take any and all questions related to EasySpeak. As I mentioned, to request it for your club, you just simply go to easy-speak.org, and on that main page, I believe it's down near the bottom. Let me, I can actually multitask here and look that up. So yeah, if you just land on the home page on the top, or sorry, the bottom right, there's a big plus sign. You put in your club number and you put in add club. So let's see, add club. Comes up with a dialog box asking for your username and password. So you'll register as a new user if you're not already registered, and away you go, more or less. So that's all there is to actually start it up and get it going. And in the advanced section, we'll kind of get a little bit more into the actual nitty-gritty, how to administrate the site, basically. So, Doreen, you've come up with a really good question about the speaker role. Yes, that is the only role that needs to be requested in advance. For whatever reason, I think they've set it up in that way so it can track your progress in the communications program. But for me personally, I don't like that. That's one of the features that I don't like about the scheduling, because if I'm VP Education, I can keep track of how far along people are in their projects and what have you. Myself, I don't necessarily want to use the site, and by having it set up that way, it can be a little awkward if your club operates on kind of a rotational basis. There's no real way to turn it off directly, although we'll probably go over this in the advanced session. There is a way to set up a role called speaker, and the system doesn't recognize it as a formal speaker. Then it's just a role, just like any other role. So the same as a speech evaluator or a timer or what have you. So it's then it would be auto assigned and everything. It's just not going to keep track then of how far along you are in projects, because as far as the system knows, you're not actually a speaker. You're just taking a role. That's the only workaround I've found. It's not the best workaround, but it is one that could be utilized if you have a rotation, because I know some clubs do. All right, well, if you do have a question, continue typing it, and I'll be able to answer it. I just want to go over a couple of final things here before we do end this. So with EasySpeak, I'm super happy to help out, as I mentioned. Don't hesitate at all to contact me. My contact details are up on the screen at the bottom there. It's mbound, D21 @gmail.com. That's mbownD21@gmail.com. Any further questions, any troubles you're having once you start setting things up, send them my way. It's a site I really believe firmly in, so all the more I'm happy to help. If you're joining for the advanced session, we will be ending this first and then launching the advanced session. It was set up as a separate. We were supposed to have this session a week ago, of course, and I'm sure most, if not all of you, are aware of this. It just so happens that I ended up on a ship, a ferry heading to Vancouver Island, with not enough time to get back to the workstation here in order to run this on time, and I didn't want to have everybody waiting. So apologize about that, but as a result, nevertheless, they've kind of been set up as two separate sessions completely, even though they're very, very linked, obviously. Anna, you've asked, what are the differences between EasySpeak and FreeToast Host? I'm going to do a little more comparison on the advanced session on the different options. I'm not going to get deep into it because I'd be worried, first of all, that I'd forget something. But the way I see it is, the day one when these folks started developing their site, FreeToast Host, the person who developed it was making websites for clubs. The person who developed EasySpeak was setting up an automation tool for your club, so primarily scheduling. From that purpose, both have branched out, and they're kind of now more or less competitors. And I don't really like using competitors because neither of them are in business per se. They're both there as a service to Toastmasters clubs around the world. They both have a worldwide following. I mean, if you go to a club in Europe, Asia, Africa, wherever, you're going to find similar tools. Something like FreeToast Host, I do find is a little more straightforward. So you have a little bit less customizing. So I wish there was a grammarian on the line for my sorry about that. There is the ability to send out a blanket email, for example, in FreeToast Host, but you can't. There's no template that's ready to go to just fire them out, I don't think. Although they've just come out with a FreeToast Host 3, I believe, which has some new features built in, and that may be just something that they've started to crack the surface of now. I seem to remember there's some more things to do with that they're coming out with. User friendliness is probably a little bit higher with FreeToast Host, but you get that power of that automated meeting role assignment and those template emails that go to the select parties that I really like. And I think that's why I put FreeToast Host just a little ahead when it comes to scheduling. But I like the look and feel of the web presence on FreeToast Host more than EasySpeak. And it's more universally known for its web page features, FreeToast Host. So both are good tools. I would never say, absolutely don't use one. I just think that for me, I wish there was a combination of the two. That would be just the perfect tool. But we don't live in a perfect world. And one of my clubs I've been involved with use both. EasySpeak almost exclusively for scheduling, FreeToast Host almost exclusively as like an external web page for promotion. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope that you found this useful in some way, shape, or form, and feel free to contact me. I will do everything I can to make this an even better experience for you if you've got those questions, because I think these tools really help our clubs make them more well-rounded, and that is always nice. So the recording will be up as well if you wish to review it in the future. And thanks for your time on this Sunday evening.